You're listening to Airey Bros Radio. Be there or be square, because it's all killer, no filler.
Put a freaking smile on, right? This is a customer service industry, but you could be the best and smartest trainer in the entire world. But if you're an asshole or boring and you can't spend an hour with me and you can't hold a conversation, like, it's just not going to work. Your personality is your business card.
Speak client, not coach. If I tell somebody internally rotate their shoulder on a swing so you don't bash your wrist, they're going to be like, what does that mean? If I tell them to put their thumb in their butt, they're going to be like, oh, okay, I know how to do that, right?
I like to speak through my posts in a way, like to give people the autonomy to kind of like, it doesn't have to be just this. Like, I want you to take it as like a thought process and put your own spin on it. But each workout gives you more than it takes away. At the end of the day, if they don't play for the Yankees, but they still work out for the rest of their life because they had a good experience the first time they worked out when they were 13, like, that's really what matters. This is Pat Damiano, and you're listening to Airey Bros Radio.
So a little through line for you. We always like to tell our guests how we found them and all that sort of stuff. I've been teaching physical education for the first time this year, and so we have a really nice facility and a lot of kettlebells and implements like that. And I found myself in a rabbit hole on Instagram one evening, and Jimmy's a certified kettlebell instructor, so I came across your content and sent it to Jimmy, and so here we are.
Look at that. I like to hear that.
Yeah,
that's great.
So Pat, like Rich said, I'm super into kettlebells. I've been getting back onto the strength side of things. So I've been eating up all the complexes that you have. I love them because you always got a row in one of them to start off. And I love doing the rows.
I like that. Yeah, I like starting from the ground up. So rows always find their way in the mix.
Yeah, everything's like pretty proportionate. I'm still a little bit of a wrestling meathead, so I have trouble with the 90-second rest. I like kind of just like, I'll do it for 20 minutes. So I'm still trying to get into the intervals of things, but definitely want to get into some of your programming, how you structure things. I know you're real big on that, but want to kind of get a little bit of your story. Think you're a jiu-jitsu guy a little bit. Want to kind of get into how you got into kettlebells, being a trainer. Let us have it.
So I'm 30 now. I was 13. I was a freshman in high school when I first started getting into working out, just to get stronger and better at baseball. It was like, that was 2007. Yeah, 2007. So it's like, no social media to help me out. So I was like, all right, curls, tricep extensions, lat pull downs, like basically just bodybuilding stuff. Maybe a leg day every 3 weeks, but nothing too special in terms of anything like real functional or real that would transfer to actually baseball. But I just kind of got into working out, getting into fitness. And then ironically enough, so it's funny because I was just having this conversation, I just rediscovered how I discovered kettlebells was the movie 300 came out in 2006 or 7 or something like that. So that's when everybody was like, I got to be one of these guys. And it, that was kind of like the mini birth, whether we knew it or not, of CrossFit. That was the first time people saw, guys doing like circuit training, interval stuff, and kind of more functional stuff. So I got a little into kettlebells at that age, just kind of dabbling with them, nothing too crazy. I bought a few myself, like I still have them. Like I was probably 15 or 16 years old when I bought them. Looking back, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing with them, but I always kind of liked them. And ever since then, they've been a part of my training in some sort of way, not even close to what I'm doing now, but they've been in the rotation. So say 13 to 18 years old, I was doing bodybuilding stuff. 19 is when I discovered CrossFit, drank the Kool-Aid hard, was doing that probably about 19 to 22 or 23. Then I got into Olympic weightlifting. Did that pretty aggressively for about 3 years. Then I did a mishmash of like nothing really too structured for a little while. Then I got into jiu-jitsu in 2021. So I'm coming up on 3 years. And that's what kind of really dove me back into the kettlebells. I was doing like a bodybuilding split at the time. I was tight, deconditioned, imagine a bodybuilder walking into a jiu-jitsu gym. It didn't go so well for me, just besides the fact that I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But I was tight, just didn't feel athletic. So I was like, let me go back to like this more unconventional, more functional style of training. That's when I started really picking up, the clubs, maces, kettlebells, all that type of stuff. Just kind of playing around with it. And then for a couple of years and started feeling better, really, really liked it and enjoyed it. And then kettlebells were a decent part of that. And then I'd say the beginning of this year is when I was like, I'm going to make the switch to like really just diving into the kettlebells hard and start really lifting with them and making that basically most of my training. Now we're here.
Right on. So you said something, you said a couple of things there that caught my ear. One thing you said is you drank the CrossFit Kool-Aid. Rich and I definitely drank the CrossFit Kool-Aid at a certain point. Rich was on the CrossFit Endurance seminar team at a certain point. So I'm just kind of curious to you, what kind of led you away from that CrossFit type phase? Because I know for Rich and I just kind of got burnt out, wanted to kind of direct ourselves more towards our sports and kind of just getting strong for that. So I'm just curious for you what it was.
Kind of the same thing. So obviously in CrossFit, you do a lot of clean and jerks and snatches, and they were just always kind of my favorite part. And I was getting to the point where I was like kind of getting not sick of CrossFit. I was just like, I remember walking in one day. So my gym didn't post the workouts. You found out when you walked in. So you couldn't like cherry pick your workouts. I just remember looking at the board and it was like 90 something thrusters. I was just like, oh, I'm fucking sick of this. And at the same time, my gym was hiring an Olympic weightlifting coach was kind of like moving his business into my gym at the time. It was in Tampa and it was a huge gym. So it was just kind of coincidental that as I was getting a little sick of just killing myself every day with CrossFit, I always liked Olympic weightlifting the best. He moved in. It all just kind of happened at the same time. And I was like, let me give this a shot. And to be honest, I was pretty good at Olympic weightlifting. I like sports that have weight classes because I'm strong for my size, not strong overall. So Olympic weightlifting, just really enjoyed it. And I was pretty good at it. So I just kind of stuck with that. So it was a little bit of that, a little bit of just getting a little burnt out with CrossFit.
Are you a Florida guy, Pat?
So no, I'm from New York, but I went to school at University of Tampa and then stayed down there for about a year after. So I lived there for about 5 years.
Okay. And you're back in New York now?
Back in New York now, yep.
Okay. Are you like New York City or whereabouts? Not to get too personal.
Oh, no. It's I'm about 30 minutes north of New York City. So I'm basically as far south as you can get in New York without being in New York City.
Okay. Cool. Is that like Westchester or?
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at.
Okay, cool. And you mentioned the jiu-jitsu. So you had a sport background in baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And what's your tale of the tape in terms of you said you're strong for your weight class and for your size and stuff, but not necessarily in the grand scheme of things. So I'm curious, what do you weigh? How tall are you?
So I'm 5'8", and right now I actually weigh about like 180. For the first time in my life, I'm seeing like 180 on the scale. I'm normally 170 and kind of been that way like since Olympic weightlifting. So for like 7 or so years, I was basically right at 170 for a while because that's what I lifted at.
Okay, cool. And so in this journey of your fitness, when does, doing all the different things and the modalities that you enjoy doing, when did that get into you creating programs or working with other athletes or other individuals?
So I've always been a trainer not always been, but I went to school for exercise science. So this has always been like, this path has kind of always been something I wanted to do with my career. I started training people on my campus gym at Tampa right when I could. I turned 18. I was allowed to get my cert. I went and got that right away and just started training people on campus. So just been taking that, and then taking all the different modalities that I do and trying them out with clients. Some things people aren't really all for. Some people just want to do regular lifting and stuff. But I've been doing that since I was 18 and just kind of been doing that, trying to build my business throughout those years. And like I said, just taking different things that I learned, different modalities, and kind of, trying it out with clients.
I take it they like kettlebells?
They have to because they're with me. No, they definitely do. There's definitely a level of, they want to do what I really like because that's obviously what gets me fired up. It gets me passionate. But at the same time, I also know that they're not me. So they want to use barbells or body weight, or they don't love their wrists getting hit every day with a kettlebell. So, and I just kind of I have this thing where like if I find something I really want to continue to go for it and just like see what I can do with it. And it's just kind of like a hyper focus. And I know that not all of them want to do that. They just want to get in shape. So we definitely use them. Depending on the client, they use a lot more. Some of them barely use them, just kind of stick with swings and farmers carries and stuff like that. But everybody uses them to some degree, just because I can't help myself but throw them in the mix.
And you see, you get Jimmy and I are both. We both have our Suples bags. We were
Oh yeah,
quasi friends with Ivan Ivanov, the creator.
yeah.
I'm curious, when did that start working its way into the rotation for you?
Ooh. So when I don't remember when, but I remember why and how. So all of that kind of falls in the realm of the unconventional world, the kettlebells, clubs, maces. And I'd always kind of known what Bulgarian bags were, and I just never pulled the trigger on one. And then I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Action Bronson.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I figured as much. So one day I just like ended up on his Instagram. I've actually followed him for a while before he even got into his fitness journey. And I just ended up on his Instagram page, and he really liked them at the time that I hopped on his Instagram. And it was just one of those things where like, all right, I got to do it. So I actually bought one of the like functional swing bags, the bootleg version. So I bought one of those, immediately loved it. And then kind of started getting more into like getting the actual Bulgarian bags, doing the certifications. And those I really liked for a period of time. Those are a lot of fun. I did those when I was pretty heavily into jujitsu, when like that was like kind of my priority. So I was probably going about 4 times a week, and those were awesome. Obviously, that's the reason they were created, is so you could wrestle people on mats. So
Yeah.
I was a really big fan of those for a while because they transfer very well into the mats.
Yeah, unbelievable grip training there.
Oh my God, so much.
Yeah, and I want to thank you because you kind of, I don't want to say I got bored of it, but for a while I was just doing spins, doing the shoulder stuff, doing snatches, obviously squats and lunges, but I felt like I was kind of locked into a certain set of movements, and then you introduced me to the cement mixers, you
Yeah.
introduced me to the squat swing, so it
Nice.
definitely had me playing with that. First day I was doing the squat swings, it's like hard trying to figure that out, trying to like extend it and not hit the ground. But man, that gets your glutes for sure.
Oh my God, that'll light you up. You'll wake up the next day and be like, what the fuck did I just do?
That's exactly what happened. Obviously, you caught our attention because you're posting the complexes and you got a bunch of videos. So that's kind of like, oh, free workouts, sweet, right? But then as I start watching your content, you're funny, right? You have different ways you like doing things. I've seen you doing some videos where like you're talking to yourself as another person. You mentioned with the kettlebells a couple times, thumb in the butt. Rich and I laugh about that because I had a wrestling coach that actually used to yell that in front of a full team. So that popped us. But I'm kind of curious of your mindset when it comes to creating content and what platforms to put what on. And did it just start for you as just, hey, I'm going to do complexes, and then you realize you had a niche, and what made you kind of go for the other kinds of varieties of videos?
Yeah. So ironically, I just posted one of those videos probably 2 minutes before we hopped on. So when we're done with this, and it's kind of a funny one. I'm biased, but so yeah, I think a lot of that. So I use it. I don't like to refer to myself as like a fitness influencer. I like to refer to myself as a trainer who happens to have a big following. Now, the reason I say that is because I differentiate between the two, because I train people in person, and some people don't, and that's fine. That's their thing. It's their shtick. But I train a lot of people, and I train everyday regular people. And something I've noticed is like a lot of the science and the coach jargon and this and that doesn't resonate with them at all. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ben Bruno, but he has a saying that I stole from him, and it is speak client, not coach, right? So like I use the word toning with my clients because they know what that means. I'm not here to get into an argument that was, oh, actually it's, lose fat, you build muscle, this and that. So that leads me into like, if I tell somebody internally rotate their shoulder on a swing so you don't bash your wrist, they're going to be like, what does that mean? If I tell them to put their thumb in their butt, they're going to be like, oh, okay, I know how to do that, right? So that's where some of that stuff comes into play. And then you just, you try and make it a little bit more relatable to most people. And that sometimes leads into like really dumb cues that tend to stick because inappropriate stuff tends to work. because people remember it. So that's where a lot of that stuff started to come from, is just playing around with teaching regular people other things and seeing which one of those stick. And, that's where some of the kind of weird stuff comes from. When it comes to the actual content, a lot of it is, I try and make my content as take homeable as the term that I use as possible. Right. So it might be a cue that finally makes sense to you because you've been trying not to hit your wrist as much as you can and you just can't figure it out. And then this guy says something ridiculous like, oh, finally, like I can use that. I can go home with it, or it's a free workout, or it's some sort of entertainment. And just trying to blend all of those together to make it digestible again for the everyday person and make something that might be a little intimidating, new, which is kettlebells. Not everybody is very willing to go grab a bunch of kettlebells and try them out. Try to make them just a little bit more approachable. That makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And you said that you're coach first, right? The social media is the second piece to it all. Does the social media bring clients in, or is that like a different sect of clients on the social media?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It is definitely a different sect of clients. I probably have like one or two, maybe even just one client who's like messaged me on Instagram, but like, I want to train with you. Let's do it. Everybody else I've gotten just before I even built a following and, word of mouth and all the typical like in-person type of stuff that you would get, like brick and mortar type of, business or gym. That's where most of my clients have come from, and I've just kept them for a while. And then the social media is, just a completely different set of clients, completely different marketplace. And I kind of do it that way intentionally and unintentionally. I could definitely use my social media, like teach my current clients a little bit, just in a way, like maybe they just hear me say something differently in a video as opposed to with them in person. But for the most part, it's kind of a separate clientele. And I try to do that intentionally a little bit.
Did you grow the social media like slow and steady over time, or was there one or two videos that just popped and the next thing you know, you just had people flooding in?
Yeah, that's actually exactly what happened. And it was the same video. So I've had Instagram probably for 10 years. And this May, I had 15,000 followers. Sometime in early May, I posted a video, super simple one, just a kettlebell complex. I wasn't mic'd up. My wife filmed it. I was just talking to class. There was nothing special about it. For some reason, it blew up. And I gained like 85,000 followers from that. And that was like May to June. And then something happened with the video or the audio, and it got taken down. I don't know why. And then I was like, what if I post it again? See what happens. And the same thing happened. I was like, what the fuck? So that's what then got my second push from like 150 to 200. So it was very abrupt, but it was one of those like, it takes 10 years to be an overnight success. I'm definitely not calling myself an overnight success. I'm just using that terminology because it took me 10 years to get to 15,000 followers. And then it took me 7 months to get 185,000 more. So it was that one video, and I've tried to study it and figure out why the hell it popped, but I don't really know why, but it's 2 for 2.
What's that bump like? I mean, that's you gotta, did you just wake up the next morning and all of a sudden you jump from like 15 to maybe 20 or how was it? You said from May to June?
Yeah. So Instagram does the same. So Instagram used to, when you would sign on, it would tell you like all of your notifications, right? You have 112 likes and 48 people followed you, whatever it is. But now if any of those numbers are over 100, it just says 100. So if you log on and it's like you gained 10,000 followers overnight, it just says 100. So I just remember logging on one day and it said 100. I was like going through a little bit of a spurt. I was like, cool. And then I went on my page and I was like up 3,000 from the night before. I was like, what's going on? And I went and that video was going and it just kept going and going and going. And like every like day was like 1,000 or 2,000 people. It was very weird. And I just didn't, it was nice, right? It was like one of those like, okay, like this is paying off finally, but it was definitely surreal. It was a lot. I do my best to interact with everything that comes across my page. So for like that 10-day span, when that first video was going, I was like answering comments, answering DMs left and right. So it was definitely like mentally a little taxing just being on my phone all the time during that time period. But I try to interact with people the best that I can. So it was nice.
What did that video entail? You said it was a complex, yeah?
Yeah, it was literally just a complex. It was me. I teach a class on the weekends, so I do all personal training, and then once a week I teach a class on the weekends. And it was me just being like, "Hey guys, our kettlebell complex is this. It's 5 rows, 5 single arm swings, 5 thrusters. As soon as you're done, switch sides, then you can rest." And again, I'm not mic'd up. The video is nothing special. It's just off my phone, and it just went. Yeah, it's weird. I'm trying to repeat it.
Do you play any of the algorithm game, any of the post at a certain time game, anything like that? Do you try to post every day?
I try and post every day for the most part, just to keep things going. I post at a certain time of day, 50% because I think that's right, and 50% it's just the way my schedule works. Like I'm just busy with clients in the mornings, so I never post in the morning just because I'm doing stuff. But I try and play the algorithm a little bit and kind of like play the game. That's what I call it. So I'll definitely try and probably a lot less than most people, but it's definitely like in the back of my mind, like, yeah, you know what? It's Friday. It's 5 o'clock. I haven't really thought of a post. Let's not post today. Let's not push it. Let's maybe save it. I usually don't do like Friday night or Saturdays. I save it for what I think are the more optimal times.
Do you script stuff out with certain things? Obviously, there's some creativity with some of the videos. Are you scripting stuff out? I know sometimes you're filming in front of the class. Do you kind of say, "Hey, I'm gonna get 3 this week in front of the class, 3 on my own, and maybe 3 kind of being creative"? How's that work?
Yeah. I don't do it in that way and like, okay, let me plan my week out, but I definitely go into certain scenarios like, okay, I'm going to go in my garage. I'm going to try and get these 4 videos because they're at the top of my mind. Or, hey, class is going to have this thing going on today. So I know we're talking about snatches. So I can definitely get a complex. I can probably get a good snatching cue video and maybe something else. So I'll definitely go into scenarios with like, okay, this is what I would like to get out of this. Sometimes it doesn't work because I like don't speak right or I forget or whatever it is, but for the most part, I have a little bit of like a blueprint going into each week in terms of what I want to get out of it, or at least each session, I should say, whether that's like a content filming session or a class or something like that. And I kind of just like I go through spurts of like being super creative, then not at all. So if I have a bunch of ideas, I'll just kind of throw them out and try and get them out there. And then sometimes I'm not feeling as creative. And then that might be where it's like, hey, this was my workout today. And then I'll try and maybe have like some sort of creative caption or something that's maybe like a lesson in the caption. So it's not just like, hey, look at me working out today. So that's when I might be feeling like a little less creative.
As far as the training, and I know you have a program people can sign up for on your website, I believe. But as far as the training with the complexes, what do you suggest for people who fall upon your page? They finding themselves doing complexes every day. Do you suggest doing complexes every day? Do you suggest, all right, one day do a complex, next day maybe focus on some pure strength stuff, maybe do something else that's not a kettlebell? How do you figure someone can structure workouts off of your page?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. The first question, I guess, or the first thing comes down to like how much do they want to use kettlebells? If it's like maybe once or twice a week, then what I say with the complexes specifically is treat it how you would treat almost anything else, right? So I personally really like to do them heavy. So I'll use them as a strength piece, right? I'll do 3 rows into 3 swings into 3 push press. Let's just say, for example, I'll go really heavy. I'll rest about a minute and a half, and I'll do 6, 7, 8 sets or something like that. Now, one, that's just the way I like to do things. Two, I have access to a bunch of kettlebells. So that definitely helps me out a lot. Someone might not have access to kettlebells where they can go heavy enough on that. So it might be maybe they use it as a warm up or a little bit more as a conditioning piece or maybe an accessory piece. So maybe they go a little bit lighter and maybe they bump the reps up a little bit. They do 5 rows into 5 swings into 5 push press, and maybe they're resting 30 seconds or 45 seconds. And then they go into their second set, or maybe they put that together with something, right? Maybe you do that and then you hop on a rower for 15 calories and you use it as a little bit, of a conditioning or metabolic conditioning piece. So those are kind of the ways I'd like to suggest people do it. And I I like to I like to speak through my posts in a way like to give people the autonomy to kind of like it doesn't have to be just this. Like I want you to take it as like a thought process and put your own spin on it, right? I want people to make up their own. I want people to be like, okay, I don't have heavy enough kettlebells. He did 3 on each side or 3 reps for each thing. I'm going to do 5 or 6 because mine are lighter. And I could start to maybe utilize this potentially small kettlebell arsenal that I have. So I like to let people put their spin on it. In an ideal world, I like to use them as a strength piece, like I said, and take a little bit of rest. But like you were saying, you kind of have to like fight yourself on that sometimes. Then that's fine. You rest for 30 to 45 seconds, and then maybe you can do 7 to 10 sets in 15 minutes, and then you have plenty of time to go do something else. Or maybe that was your finisher for the workout. And then I know you also brought up, like, do you do them every day? Is kind of you can. I think it depends on how you structure it, right? If I'm going to do one every day, do I want to put rows in every single one of them? Maybe not. Maybe one's a little bit more of a lower body focus. Maybe the next day is a little bit more of an upper body focus and something like that. Any other traditional exercise sciencey type of knowledge you would take, you can just implement right into kettlebell complexes.
You mentioned earlier when we got on here talking about some clients or some people, they're intrigued by the kettlebell, but they don't like the way it smashes their forearm and that sort of stuff. That's kind of the camp that I tend to reside in. Like, I know how to do swings, American Russian. I'll do the windmills. I'll do Turkish get-ups and that sort of stuff. But when it comes to like the clean or the snatch, Jimmy's never been able to get me to not smash my wrist. So I was curious if you have any tips for people out there that, like myself, who aren't opposed to using kettlebells, but that definitely don't like having sore wrists either.
Yeah. Well, first one, put your thumb in your butt. Yeah. So the biggest thing that I've found just through coaching is starting with either doing a dead clean or a dead snatch. So what that means is just starting, instead of swinging the kettlebell, you start with it on the ground in between your legs, right? So you guys have done CrossFit before. So imagine like a similar concept to a dumbbell snatch, right? When you did dumbbell snatch, you just started on the ground and you just went straight up overhead. You didn't swing it. So the more we swing it, the more moving pieces we have, the more likely things are to go wrong. So that's what I recommend from like the ground up is starting on the ground, and then you go into the cleaner snatch from there. And then as people start to get a little bit more comfortable with that, then they can maybe try swinging a little bit, because swinging when we get out is usually where it flips over and goes right here. But if we're upright right there and we keep it close to us, it usually allows for a little bit of a smoother transition. And then once people have that down or they're doing that, the 2 biggest things I see happening is people are either gripping the kettlebell way too tight or they're pulling way too hard. So I always use like the egg toss example, right? In an egg toss, you have to kind of absorb it and catch it. You need a little bit of finesse when it comes to doing something like that. If it's day one, right, and you have a 26-pound kettlebell, chances are, and let's just say 175-pound guy is learning how to do it, there's a good chance he could take that kettlebell and throw it 15 feet above his head if he really wanted to. So if he pulls on that clean and pulls on that snatch as hard as he can, and he rips it up, and then he flips, his kettlebell is going to go up and then flop over, as opposed to maybe being just a little bit lighter with it. So pulling as much as you need, but not as much as you can, if that makes sense. And then usually if they're gripping way too tight, it's because they're kind of stressed out a little bit. And what happens is they pull it as hard as they can. And then what happens is the kettlebell this works out. Kettlebell flips over and they're holding really hard, really tight. And then it freezes for a second because they're holding so tight. And then no matter what, it's just going to kind of free fall and fall down. So it's flipping over no matter what, no matter how tight you're holding. So relaxing the grip and then not pulling as hard are 2 things that I've noticed work really well with people, because they're trying so hard not to bash the wrist, and it's new and it might be a little stressful. They're just super tense and like just anxious to pull as hard as they can.
Yeah. I think that was because Jimmy had the kettlebell experience before we got into the CrossFit. And so I got into the CrossFit and more like the barbell clean and jerk and the snatch and that sort of stuff. So I was always trying to use those sort of same mechanics and not necessarily utilizing the swing as much. So I appreciate that. I'm also curious, in your client base, do you work with any high school athletes?
I used to work with them a lot. It was actually like my shtick for a while. I really, really liked it. And especially during like COVID, that was like really big for me because for a really long time they had nothing else to do. Everything was closed, all sports and all that, but they could work out. So I did it for a while. The only reason I really stopped was quite frankly just it's business wise. I was starting to get really busy in terms of just like my adults. And as much as I love training kids, their schedules are all over the place and it's inconsistent. You know, they'd be coming in once a week for 6 months and then they disappear for 6 months because hockey started. And oh, I'm sorry, he forgot he has 4 tests tomorrow. He can't come in today, like that type of stuff. So it's like that's like really one of my passions just because I've discovered it so early. Unfortunately, just like scheduling and all that stuff never really worked out for me to stick with it.
Well, I'm curious. Obviously, athletes are coming to you specifically for sports specific training, but some of my experiences with the high school kids that are maybe not necessarily athletes, but just in the PE class, trying to get them out of that meathead mentality or the bodybuilding mentality of like they're doing curls and then they're constantly looking at their arms. And we don't even have mirrors in the gym, but
Right.
I'm just curious if you had any insight as to, because I know you'd mentioned, and I was the same way, I did a lot of bodybuilding stuff when I was younger too, of how to like express to them like, hey, if you focus on getting strong, you're probably going to look the way you want to look anyway.
Yeah. No, it's super common. I mean, I used to have kids come in just every day, like, can we PR today? I'm like, you don't even know what that means. And, so that was something I dealt with a lot actually, because, every 13, 14, 15-year-old guy wants a six pack and bigger biceps. And I always kind of I use this with adults too. It's kind of like you can have your dessert if you eat your broccoli type of analogy, where it's like, cool, if you want to do bicep curls, like, okay, we're going to superset it with back squats or Bulgarian split squats or something like that. So that was something I found like very, very efficient or very effective when it came to like kind of keeping their attention. And look, this works for adults too, but specifically with kids, like you have one thing, they're like, all right, I don't love this. And then the other thing was like, okay, I really want to do these. So that always felt like a pretty good mix of it. And what also helped, I think, at least in my specific case, was I was working with a lot of like 14-year-old boys. So I'm just taking the words of their parents is I was slightly a role model for them. And that's where actually my social media became like a nice little like educational thing for them, is because they would see me swinging kettlebells and maybe even some maces and picking up sandbags, and they'd come in and be like, ooh, can we try that today? So that was really helpful too, just kind of like, showing them and educating them like there's other like fun stuff that they can do in the gym, and just, sprinkling it in without kind of forcing it upon them, and still letting them do the things that they want to do. Because at the end of the day, if they don't play for the Yankees, but they still work out for the rest of their life because they had a good experience the first time they worked out when they were 13, like that's really what matters. So I always liked to do things that they liked. I would ask them, they'd come in and be like, what do you want to do today? Be like, we want to do this. I'm like, all right, cool. You want to do curls? We're going to back squat also at the same time. Be like, all right, fine. And I found that to be really good because, again, like I said, they have to like it. That's the most important part. So finding things that they like dessert, and balancing with the things they don't like broccoli.
I like that. I'm going to use that. Got to eat your broccoli before you can have your dessert. I love
it.
Pat, do you have a certain breath count or breath technique you like to use on your snatches or your swings? Because I've been playing with a couple different ones. We just had Keith Weber on last week. He gave me a new kind of suggestion. So I'm just curious what you do for the breath count.
I do, and I only know that because somebody else called me out for doing it, and I wasn't doing it intentionally. So I definitely can't explain it the best way. I know it is very similar to the Valsalva maneuver, where like if I'm doing a heavy snatch, let's just say I swing it. So I swing it, I breathe out. I'm going to breathe in as it comes down, and then I'm still holding it in. And as I get like halfway up, I'm going to breathe out real quick and then hold it again at the top. So I'm still kind of braced. I know I don't know the Valsalva maneuver like that in depth, but I know it is some sort of play on that. And again, I don't really do it intentionally. It was just something I kind of naturally do just to try and stay braced in the moments I feel like I need to stay braced. So, which to me is the bottom of the swing, right? So when the kettlebell is between my legs, and then once I get to the top. So other than that, I'm just kind of like breathing out real short. And then once I get into the position I feel like I need to be braced, I'm sucking back in. I wish I could explain it a little better. I honestly didn't even know I was doing it. And someone was like, "Yo, that's pretty legit. Where'd you learn that?" I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about.
I told myself.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just from I think it comes from Olympic weightlifting. Kind of like if you're doing a heavy squat clean, it's kind of the same similar breathing pattern to that, which over I'm assuming after Olympic weightlifting for like 4 years, it just started to happen naturally to like one, not pass out, and two, just to be a little bit more effective.
Yeah, that's actually what Keith suggested as well. And the other question I had, you mentioned about like pulling in the snatch a little bit. And I'm curious if you have any clients that have any issues with like tennis elbow, because for the first time in my kettlebell training, I have a little bit of a tennis elbow, and like it's making me super conscious of my movement and how I'm moving. Like every time I feel that elbow, I'm like, all right, I'm pulling too much. I'm not swinging enough. Do you have any cues for that, or does that ever come up in with your clients?
I get so golfer's elbow or tennis elbow? So definitely tennis elbow.
Right here.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, that's something I don't come across as much. Probably a little bit more golfer's elbow on the inside. But that's going to be one of those things where it's just letting the legs work. I'm like very, very over technical when it comes to the legs and making sure my clients are just popping up everything with their legs. Also, like me, my clients do a ton of legs, so fortunately, like they're strong and they use them a ton. But that's just going to be like almost an over exaggeration of using the legs. If you feel like you're pulling way too much, and part of that might be because I was actually talking to a client today, ironically enough, that you brought that up. Part of that might be the way they're catching it. If they're not like super smooth and super solid up top, it might be like a bit of a shake. And you're saying you might feel it in the pull. If you're feeling it specifically in the pull, that might be different. But sometimes I find people are overhead with the kettlebell, or as they catch it, if it's like kind of wonky overhead, that's going to put a lot of strain on the elbow too. So that could come down to having a smoother transition. But if it's specifically on the pull, that's just going to be an over exaggeration in using the legs, in my opinion.
You know what's weird now that I really think about it as we're talking about it? It's actually like the snatch, you would think it would bother me. The snatch doesn't bother me at all. It's more in like my rows or my cleans.
Hmm.
That's when I'm feeling it the most. And obviously with the rows, because I'm not activating through the shoulder properly at the initial pull. So I definitely feel that, and then that makes me correct. But it's always like, oh man, I'm doing snatches. And I'm like, oh, this doesn't hurt. I don't know why this doesn't hurt.
Yeah, but something as simple as a row does.
Yeah.
That might be with those two specifically, that might be you just over gripping too.
All
If you're
right.
just squeezing the life out of that kettlebell, because on a snatch, you're probably not. You're probably a little smoother and you're not holding it so tight because you said you've done certs and you know how to use them. Like if you have a nice smooth transition, then you're probably very relaxed in the grip, which is great. And if you're rowing heavy, you might just be white knuckling it and might be good at just kind of like I found like here, if I grab it like that, kind of like the monkey grip, some people call it, that
Yeah.
takes a little bit of tension away from the elbow. And then you just kind of have a little bit more of like a hook with your hand instead of like grabbing the hell out of it.
Do you teach in group situations, or do you do like one-on-ones with people?
So I used to do both. I used to teach CrossFit. So
Okay.
2013, I moved back to New York. Yeah, 2013, I moved back to New York and I was like the head trainer at a CrossFit gym. So I was teaching like 25, 30 CrossFit classes a week. And then we started having, like most CrossFit gyms did, we started having like regular boot camp type of classes too. So I did a ton of group fitness, slowly started to get more clients and then just like got more clients, took away some classes, more clients took away. So now I'm primarily personal training. I do some small group stuff, like 2 to 3 people. And then I just teach that one class that I have on Saturdays.
All right. Because the question I had off of that was, do you prefer to teach someone coming in for the first time one-on-one prior to letting them take a group class? Because that was always an issue I had when I was coaching, is like you have people coming in and you're trying to teach someone how to use kettlebells in a group class that never really went well.
Yeah, it's tricky. If it's like day one, then yeah, that one-on-one scenario is going to be ideal. If they have the prerequisite of a swing down, there I could if you give me like 2 minutes with them in a group setting, I feel like I'm pretty confident to uh get them at least feeling fairly comfortable with whatever we're doing, usually cleans or snatches. So as long as they have that prerequisite, I'm pretty comfortable. But yeah, if someone comes in like day one and they've never done anything like that before, anything with kettlebells, it'd be more ideal to be in like that one-on-one setting just to kind of hone things in, because you can get so much done in 20 minutes, just you and one other person, as opposed to, group class that has 15, 20 people in it and you're seeing them for just a couple minutes. It can get tricky, which at least for me personally, like I'm fortunate enough to where I write the workout for my group fitness stuff. So I keep the group fitness stuff a little bit simpler. Like we don't do snatches that often in my group for that exact reason. Just keep it simpler.
And what does that programming process look like for you? Where you obviously the kettlebell's a cornerstone right now for what you got going on, but where are you drawing inspiration from to obviously with your clients' goals that kind of steers the ship a little bit, but what's your programming process look like?
It's pretty traditional and straightforward strength training. I just use kettlebells for a little bit more of the things. And again, it depends on the clients. And it depends on the person. I have a lot of people who are like, the gym is something important to them. They want to come in and they want their deadlift to go up and their back squat to go up and their, split squats, whatever it is. They want that to go up. They want to get their first pull up. And I have a lot of people who are like, hey, I'm here because I know I should be. And it's like, as long as you don't hurt me, we're good. Like, which is fine. Like some people's goal is to maintain. If you're 58 years old and you maintain that for 20 years, like that's amazing, right? But for the most part, like for the people who are really trying to push it, I have like, it's traditional strength training, right? Where we're gonna start out with maybe some barbell presses or like barbell strict press, and we're gonna superset that with pull-ups, right? And then we're gonna go into something that's maybe a little bit more accessory, like let's just call it, here, I'll just use what we did today. So we did strict press and pull-ups, and then we did like ab wheel rollouts, supersetted with kettlebell snatches, supersetted with push-ups, right? Like it's super, super simple. Do that in a big superset fashion. And then, maybe we have 10 or 15 minutes and we usually just kind of like do some sort of conditioning piece whether it's sprints on the rowers, the assault bike, maybe something like kettlebell swings and sled pushes and things along those lines. I take inspiration from CrossFit, but it's not like a hardcore Metcon every day. It's your more traditional strength training with a decent amount of kettlebells and then some sort of interval cardio type of conditioning piece towards the end.
Nice. You mentioned the 58-year-old trying to maintain. I'm closing in on 50 myself, so I'm curious if you had any tips for because I just heard recently Ryan Fisher was talking about if he's like if you're in your 50s, he's like I wouldn't do strength training. I wouldn't do lower than reps of 5. So I'm curious if you had any tips or suggestions for the aging athlete.
Well, most of my clients are probably 45 and older, at least when it comes to like in-person stuff. And I've also noticed this just working on myself as well is I feel like what Ryan said, like keeping the reps under 5. I have like a similar philosophy, just more in terms of like your intention and intensity output into the workout. So like, you can do reps of 3, but it should be at 80-ish% or something like that. So that's kind of the way I try and take program for my clients is like every workout should be a 7.5 or 8 out of 10 in terms of intensity. Right. So where they leave and they're like, if they just sprinted on the assault bike and they feel like crap, like that's fine. But for the most part, like you feel pretty good the next day, a little sore, nothing overbearing. Like, you don't need to be, we're not trying to go to the Olympics or anything like that. So I think it's just moderating the intensity at which you're doing every workout, which Ryan is kind of explaining that you don't have to do super heavy sets of 3 back squats, right? Which I agree with in the concept that he's saying. It's just, you can do sets of 3, but just keep it at a fairly comfortable weight to where you can, get off the toilet the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's moderating intensity because that just allows you to feel good each day. Each workout gives you a little, I'm stealing this quote from someone, I can't remember who, but each workout gives you more than it takes away.
Bill Bowerman, he's basically the guy that founded Nike with Phil Knight. He was a coach at Oregon and designed the first Nike shoes, but his philosophy was always train, don't strain.
Yeah, that's exactly. It should feel good. It should feel energizing. That's what we're there to do, And like each person has their own philosophy. Look, there are days I go into the gym and I'm like, I'm just gonna bash my head against the wall and get after it. But I can't do that consistently, right? We save it for the days we're really feeling it. And most of the time it's just keeping things even keel and just slowly going uphill. And it tends to work pretty well.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, Father Time's undefeated. We can't deny it. And I tell my clients, I'm like, look, you're 50, you're not dead, but at the same time, you're not 20, right? It's like we have to balance that line a little bit. We can still train and we can still train hard, but we do have to be mindful of certain things, unfortunately. Because it'd be great to get after it every day, like we were 18 again.
And I think that's kind of because I still always love the community aspect of CrossFit.
Oh yeah.
But I think there's that hard metabolic stimulus day in, day out is what it's, because I run ultra marathons and stuff. And so if I do something that makes it so that I can't run the next day, then that kind of throws everything out of whack. So I'm always just trying to continue to progress and build strength, but also not do anything that's going to hinder my other aspect. And that was kind of the one thing we loved about CrossFit too, is like, we're doing this to be better at, what we love to do, whether it's jujitsu or wrestling or running. And, for a while it was all about, it changed from that. And then it became, oh, everyone wants to go to the CrossFit games.
Well, yeah, we've all been there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were all like right like this close, right? And that's what, like I was saying, it comes down to, what the people are looking for. I have people who are, like I said, if your goal is to go play jujitsu or go do jujitsu or play tennis 2 or 3 times a week, like I can't crush you in the gym. Some people want to get crushed, and that's totally fine as well, because the gym is their sport, right? And that's completely fine as well. When most people who are doing CrossFit, that is their sport in a sense. But it's just kind of, like you said, be mindful of making sure that what you're doing in the gym is in line with your goals.
Yeah.
And what you want to do outside of the gym, which might be foam roll and recover for your next workout, or, play with the kids and play basketball.
Yeah.
Pat, I'm curious how you kind of do that with jujitsu. Do you train, jujitsu days you're doing strength training? Do you try to, go hard on one aspect, easier on the other? How do you balance that?
I've yet to figure that out. I have a tough time not going hard in whatever I do. And in a workout, it's a little bit easier to pull back because I'm in control. But when I'm like literally fighting somebody else, it's really hard to not go ham. So what I've been doing recently that is finally kind of working is I go to jujitsu about twice a week. And that gives me the same, like what that does to my body is the same as like a really hard CrossFit workout. So like I have to plan accordingly throughout the week. So that's kind of where the mentality of, okay, all of my workouts are going to be maybe like my actual workouts, not jujitsu workouts, are going to be 40 minutes, primarily strength based because I'm getting my conditioning at jujitsu. So they're primarily strength based and they're at like a 7.5 to 8 out of 10 in terms of intensity because I can't work out at 100% and do jujitsu at 100%. And it's really hard. I'm not good enough at jujitsu yet to not do it at 100%. Like I have to try really hard to get people off of me because I'm not good enough yet. So it's been really tough because I had a period of time where I was working out too hard and going to jujitsu, and I was just like dragging ass throughout the entire week. And it was a bit of a learning curve for me. I feel like I've kind of recently gotten it with kind of pulling back on the workouts a little bit, and I can do them more. I was working out hard 3 times a week and going to jujitsu twice. Now I'm working out kind of hard 5 times a week and going to jujitsu twice, which I like because I just like working out.
Do you have a hard time? Because I know you said before you were going to jujitsu 4 to 5 times a week. Do you have a hard time just going twice a week, or do you like the working out part a little bit more than jujitsu?
Right now, I like the working out more than I like jujitsu. I've gone through phases where I like jujitsu was it for me, and I was, vice versa. Exactly what I was doing now is I was going there like maybe 5 times a week and kind of sort of working out, and that was great, and I loved it. And I've just had shifts of interest and time, and I have no problem being like, all right, I'm going to go once or twice this week. And I try really hard to keep jujitsu as a hobby. So if there's days where I'm like, I don't really feel like going today, I'll just work out instead. And I have no problem with that. But yeah, right now I'm in a phase of liking the working out better. So I've been hitting the working out a little bit more, and I like it.
Do you have a stretching practice that you implement?
Wish. I do. It's all up here. It just doesn't
Yeah.
get done. That's the problem. Um, I wish I did more. I don't do enough stretching or recovery. I don't, to be honest. I do think I will say this. I do think I am working out in a smart way to where I don't think I need a ton of recovery all of the time. I'm also 30, so that probably helps out a little bit. Um, but I'll warm up accordingly. If I get to jujitsu early, I'll have time to like maybe warm up for 20 minutes, or so I really make sure all of that is primed and ready to go. But I don't have as good of a stretchy routine as I would like to.
Wait till you get to 35, 36.
I know it's coming. I can feel it.
Call me when you're 48.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm going to try and keep it up here as best as I can and make sure it doesn't go away because I know I'm going to need it eventually.
You can manifest flexibility.
There we go. I like that. I'm gonna go with that.
Pat, I've heard you mention a couple of times, talking about like the intensity range of a 7 or an 8, that sort of stuff. Do you typically use RPE with your clients? Are you using percentages at all?
No, I really just do that for myself. I personally think RPE is really hard for like regular people to gauge because like I mean I've seen clients do a set of 5 squats like absolutely nothing. They're like, oh my God, that was so hard. And I'm like, and then I'll put on like 20 more percent and then they'll do a set of 5, no problem. Like, wow, that was heavy. I've found that they don't, and it might be my clients. I mean, again, I don't have like, if I was training decently high level CrossFitters or something like that. Like I think it'd be different. Um, I don't think, and it's not in a negative way. It just, I think it takes a long time to fully understand RPE that most people just haven't put in the reps, and I, in a good way, people have more in the tank than they think. So it's not something I really use. I'm very fortunate enough to have had most of my clients for a long time to the point where like I know what they can handle now. So I'm just like I'm in charge. Let's throw this on. That looked easy. But I think it is depending if the person can truly understand their body, and again, it's hard to get there. I do think RPE is probably the best way to go about it because I trained off of percentages before, and like there were days where 50% felt like 90, and days where 100% felt like 50. So I'm a big fan of like riding the wave. If you feel great, let's fucking go for it. If you don't, no problem. Live to fight another day. It's not that big a deal. So if you can get someone who can understand that, I think it's awesome. And I think it's the best way to train, especially again, I'm still pretty young, but as I'm getting older and my training age is pretty high, I think it's the best way to go about it.
Well, right on. You talk about having a bulk of your clientele has been with you for a long time, and Jason Ackerman always talks about the best hour of people's day. So obviously you've got a great personality and you've got some great content and stuff. So what is it specifically that has allowed you to build upon, but also keep a lot of your clients for a long time?
I think it's just that, I always say that this is, what is it? I stole this quote from Gary Vee. It was, your personality is your business card. I heard that like a really long time ago and it just like stuck with me because it like kind of, it put into words what I always felt in the fitness industry. Like you said, being the best hour of people's day. There's people going to boring jobs and like, maybe their family life isn't great, whatever it is, but like working out can always make you feel a little bit better. And at the end of the day, this is a leisure activity for people. Yes, you do. I think everybody should work out and it should be a necessity. But at the end of the day, like going to a trainer and going to the gym, you do it on your free time. It should be something you enjoy. It should be something you like to do. And I've just tried to make that such a big part of my business because at the end of the day, it's if you're moving, you're still getting healthier. You're still doing something. I'm still doing my job as a trainer for, if someone's coming in and working hard, right? So I can get somebody doing that, no problem. And that just comes through by, same thing I said with the kids, like giving them stuff they want to do, not giving them something that they're going to absolutely dread or is going to destroy them so that they can't keep their eyes open at work later, and just then actually getting to know them as a person. I had half of my clients that I have right now were at my wedding. It's just becoming friends with them, knowing their kids' name, knowing their pets' names, knowing what they're doing on the weekends, not just being like, all right, we got 5x5 today, back squats. We're going to superset that with some pull ups. It's like, what'd you do this weekend? Why do you feel like crap today? Oh, did you, whatever it is, I talk to them about their life. That's something. And put a freaking smile on, right? This is a customer service industry. Paint the smile on, whether it's real or fake, but I tend to be a pretty uh brightening. I don't know if that might be a bad word, but like I can be joyful, right? So I feel like I bring a decent amount of energy to it, and people just like that. You could be the best, smartest trainer in the entire world. I say this all the time, but you could be the best and smartest trainer in the entire world. But if you're an asshole or boring and you can't spend an hour with me and you can't hold a conversation, like it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
So that's been huge for me. It's just being a good person, being fun to be around. You know,
Right on. With that being said, have you ever had to fire a client?
one time. I've only had to do it one time. They can't. I was someone I was only seeing once a week, and they canceled on me 5 weeks in a row. And I said, "This, we're good." I said it in a more professional way than
Sure.
that, but yeah, no, only one time. The the people who don't mesh tend to fizzle out, and I've been fortunate enough to not be like, oh, I need to go get that person back. Like financially, I've been fortunate enough to, when that does happen, I have enough of a base to where I'm like, okay, and a much enough of a base and enough foresight to be like, it's probably a good thing. Let's leave it. Let's go try to get somebody who's better than that. I can, brighten my day as well when I train them because there are clients I could definitely do that.
Those people that fizzle out, it kind of works itself out. It's really important too to not take those sorts of things personally.
Yeah, that's been hard because I do.
Yeah.
I'm a very like sensitive person in that aspect, and it's been tough because people have left and it happens. But it's if you can keep your head on straight, it's usually a good thing.
Yeah.
Usually in the long run.
No doubt.
Final four, Rich.
Let's do it.
Pat, are you a coffee drinker?
Oh yeah, like crazy. This is
How do,
tea right now though because I have to go to sleep at some point. But yeah, big coffee drinker.
how do you brew your coffee and how do you take it?
So I do espresso first thing in the morning. That's like start of the day. And then I'll do just like a regular drip pod or go get it if I have like extra time to get a second coffee and just black. When I say go get it, I mean like a Starbucks or something like
Yeah.
that.
You have a espresso machine at the house?
Espresso machine at the house, yeah. And then
Very
my
nice.
gym actually that I work at just got like a big industrial coffee like maker, which has been clutch. Because I hate spending money on coffee. I can't stand it. It pisses me off so much because it's so cheap.
Yeah, I hear you. Pat, do you have any practices or rituals that you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of yourself?
Ooh, whoa! You went from coffee to that. All right. I will say this. So I either start at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. with clients. So it's early. It's not the most fun thing in the world. There's no denying that. But I don't do well at just waking up and getting right out of bed. So if I'm getting to the gym at 5, I wake up at 3:50. If I'm getting to the gym at 6, I wake up at 4:30. And my thing to make sure that that happens, I used to check my phone right away. I was messaging people, this and that. I now don't look at Instagram before 8 a.m. And I don't look at Instagram until I'm done with clients as well. So like if I have a client at 8, 9, and 10, I won't look at Instagram until 11. So that really helps. And that kind of coincides with when I wake up. I might do some stuff on my computer quick if I feel like I need to respond to like a new person on my app. But other than that, I literally just sit and stare at the wall and drink my espresso. And that kind of helps me like get ready for my day. I'm awake, show up, let the coffee do its job. And the days I don't do that, and I may do a little too much work on my computer, I'm driving to work and I'm like, something's off. So that's been a big change for me.
I like that.
Yeah, I feel you on drinking the coffee, staring at the wall. I notice in my older age, with the coffee, it does its job when I don't have to rush or go anywhere, when I can kind of just chill and relax. When I'm like chugging it back real quick to get out the door, it totally defeats the purpose for me
Yeah,
having coffee.
completely agree.
What are you listening to right now? Music, podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
I'm not reading anything at the moment. I'm definitely an avid reader. I'm just actually currently not in the middle of anything, which I should change. I'm not a big podcast. I don't listen to too many podcasts only because um, I'm already so inundated with information. I get like information overload sometimes. So I don't listen to a ton of those. I listen to music, just country. I listen to country music. And ironically enough, today, actually, because sometimes I talk to people all day long and I'm in gyms all day long. So sometimes I get like sensory overload. I was actually listening to for the past couple of days. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings nerd, so I was listening to the Lord of the Rings soundtrack because there's no words, and it just kind of like chills me out a little bit.
Right on.
But yeah, no, that's my go-to. It's an interesting field that I'm in, talking to people all day long, and like I'm listening to music for like 8 hours throughout the day usually. So when it's time to like not have to do that, I'm usually just kind of like I need to like chill for a little bit.
How's a New York boy get into country music?
School in Florida. I
Yeah,
hated it. Yeah, I hated it. And then I went down there and I was like, oh, this isn't so bad. And then it's like, when in Rome type of thing. And now it's
who,
like, it's all I listen to.
what are your go-tos
I'm a
or who?
big Morgan Wallen,
Yep.
Jason Aldean, big Jason Aldean fan, Luke Combs, kind of the typical guys, Zach Bryan, all of those.
Right on, right on. Before we get to the last one, I'm curious. This is like a sidebar here, like a final 4.2. Who do you look at in terms of in the fitness community? Who are you drawing inspiration from? Who are you following?
So I was actually just on a podcast recently. There's a guy, Gregory. So his YouTube is Lebestark. It's German, I think. He's really good. He's a big kettlebell guy too. He's a good coach and good trainer. I do take a lot of knees over toes guy stuff. I think that's pretty standard. I use that with a lot of my clients actually. Big knees over toes guy. There's a guy, Tom DeJulie. You guys may or may not know him. I get motivation for him myself because he's an absolute maniac. And he does everything that I do, just times 1,000 in terms of intensity and weight and stuff like that. And then I feel like I'm missing someone. Eric does kettlebells, is great. Really like watching his stuff, just clean, good information and nothing too fancy. But for the most part, there's a lot of the people just in the kettlebell world are just kind of like looking around and getting just like nothing, no one like really sticks out. But I just like getting a little ideas from everybody.
Right on. Thank you.
Yeah.
Last one, Pat, we got for you. Do you have a guilty pleasure or guilty pleasures?
Oof. I've had like a bad sweet tooth the past like 2 years, honestly. I know it sounds ridiculous. I was so good for so long. And then all of a sudden I just and like I kind of haven't really cared lately because I've been like trying to get stronger, put on a little size. So I'm like, let's go. But at top of the list is cookies. Any sort of cookies, just it's tough. It's tough for me. Any sort of kind.
We talking like fresh baked or store bought or doesn't matter?
I'm a fresh baked guy, like just a regular chocolate chip. I mean, but yes, it also doesn't matter. If you put a Chips Ahoy in front of me, I'll still eat it. Oreos, no problem. But yeah, real big cookie eater. It's
Okay.
tough.
I thought you were going to say the past 2 months when you said 2 years.
No, it's been like I was so good for so long, and it just. I mean, this time of year is also just a mess too, because
Yeah.
clients are like cookies here, this sweets, Thanksgiving, Christmas. It's all over the place. But yeah, no, 2 years. It's been going for a little bit now.
If it
All
makes
right.
you feel any better, I've had one for 36 years, so you're good.
So you're a smart man. I respect
Yeah.
it.
Pat, thank you for taking
Yeah.
time out of your evening to chat with the Airey Bros, and thank you for the epic content you put out.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. No, this is great. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Pat, where do you want us to send everyone? Give us your socials and all that good stuff, and we'll put all that stuff in the show notes for you too.
Yeah, Instagram and TikTok are just at Pat Damiano _, and then YouTube is Pat Damiano Performance. Pretty straightforward.
Awesome. We'll put all that stuff in the show notes and look forward to continue to follow your content and all that good stuff. So thank you for your time, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you. You guys too. I really appreciate it. This is fun.
Thank you, sir. Have a great night.
You too. Have a great night, guys.
Take care, Pat.
Okay.